Welcome to Drinkin Bros, presented by GhostBed.com.
Welcome to Drinkin Bros, kids. It is Sunday nights, 8 p.m. EST. You're bored as fuck. What better show to do than a conspiracy theory episode right now? As we speak, people are burning down 5G towers, convinced that there is a conspiracy theory that 5G has caused the coronavirus.
What's the link between those two things?
Not sure, but what they do know is this. It has been debunked as of today because Africa has thousands of COVID-19 cases and they have no 5G yet. So I don't know what I feel worse for, to be honest with you, that Africa doesn't have 5G or that the coronavirus is actually there now.
Again, what's the connection?
Dan, this is what a conspiracy theory is.
No,
dude.
Conspiracy theories, as John Brinkus, our special guest today, will let us know, are rooted in actual factual events throughout history.
Are they though?
And then there's something called, if it's like old scripture, it's called exegesis. Otherwise, it's called something else. But it's like you take more out of what you're seeing than what's actually there.
Sure.
And we're pattern building creatures.
Sure.
But there's nothing about what a 5G tower does that would result in viral shedding from the back of your throat.
And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people would say these conspiracy theories are all made up anyways. Like you said, we've got Mr. John Brinkus back on the show. You were on last week, and you told us off air, you were like, dude, I'll go down a rabbit hole with you guys, conspiracy theory-wise, of what's real, what's not, and what your beliefs are. And we said, hey, man, come back ASAP and let's do this and burn it down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So little known fact. So most people know me from sports science, but I own a production company that produced thousands of hours of TV. A lot of them were in the paranormal conspiracy space. And when I tell you I can go deep on conspiracy theories, I have researched them up one side, down another, and can speak fairly intelligently just to give people something to think about.
Okay. So let's start here. Okay. Name the shows for the audience that you have produced. And that way it'll give us a little bit of background of what you've actually gone into. Because I'm sure a lot of the people at home have seen these. Yeah,
there is a show called Fact or Faked Paranormal Files.
Oh, shit.
Sci-Fi.
Yeah, you did that one?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was so much fun. Ben Hansen was the lead in it. He now has a couple paranormal shows. He's absolutely incredible. We did one that was called like Mystical Treasure Quest or something. It was a show that was about all like finding, Ark of the Covenant and looking for the Holy Grail and all that kind of stuff. And we actually went around and dug it up and looked at everything. We had a whole bunch. We had a running series of probably 4 or 5 different shows on Sci-Fi. We had something that was very similar with Jack Osborne. It was called Paranormal Highway.
Yeah. Jack's a good friend of ours.
Yeah, I was just having ice cream with Jack and his children about a month ago.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Jack, what was incredible about that show is first of all, he's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
And, his whole battle with MS was unbelievable, but he actually was diagnosed with MS while we were shooting that show.
Oh, sure.
And it was crazy. So you have somebody call in and say, oh, I'm really sick. I think I might have MS. And I was like, oh my God, your first thought in your mind is, Jack, that can't possibly be true.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it was true. And not only was he a trooper about it, not only was he like, look, we're going to muscle our way through it. He was unbelievable. He's just one of those people that you meet that is so intelligent and articulate and thoughtful. He's the one that pointed out to me that one of the reasons why the Osbournes was so successful, and I didn't remember this, is that it came out in December of 2001. And he's like, everybody wanted something to laugh about.
Yeah. And look, that's what's happening with us today. We just got our ratings yesterday for our entire media network for Tetherball Academy Media. This is the highest we've had in our history.
Across all of our shows.
Our shows.
Our sports show is number 6.
Drinkin Bros Sports is number 6 in the world. Drinkin Bros, the rest of the show, comedy-wise, we're number 15 in the world. And we've gone every single day. Ross Patterson Revolution is number 7 in the world. We've gone every single day during, the quarantine, so that way people will have entertainment. That makes total sense, man.
It does. It's really smart because Jack was saying, if the Osbournes came out any other time, he's like, it might have just been dismissed as kind of like, quirky, weird, but not necessarily all that funny. And he's like, it was funny because people needed something to laugh about. And he's like, my family truly is a one-of-a-kind family.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They all are. All right, Brankus, we're going to get deep into this. I pulled out a bottle of Jameson here.
That's right.
I'm ready for this. I'm dug in for tonight's episode. Let's start with your favorite conspiracy theory there is. Gun to head. What is your number one with a bullet conspiracy theory?
All right, here I'm going to start this by making sure the audience understands. We're going to define what a conspiracy theorist is.
Okay.
And I'm going to define a conspiracy theorist as somebody who blindly believes that an alternate truth must be true because it's the opposite of what the mainstream has told you. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but what I am is someone who's very thoughtful.
Okay.
And someone who says, okay, here's the story that I've been told. Now let me just consider facts and see if they back up that story. And if they don't, then very frequently, if we're to take anything that's a theory or a story that's been told to us, I want everyone to apply the rules of a trial. I don't have to tell you what did happen. All I have to do is prove to you what didn't happen.
Yeah.
So if I'm representing a client and he's accused of murder, I don't have to prove who did murder somebody. I just have to tell you my client didn't do it.
Sure.
So with that in mind, the first one that I would launch into, I think a really good one that provides a lot of thought is 9/11. Gives you a lot of thought.
Okay, so so is this the one where the buildings were rigged up with explosives?
So here are just some facts that I want everyone to fit into the narrative. Now, I'm going to say right up front, the government did not conspire. The government did not have anything to do with 9/11. I do not know what the truth of 9/11 is. All I know is there are some elements that are very interesting to point out and make you say, the official story just doesn't entirely add up. And there's even things written in the official report that admits it doesn't know what happened. So I want to make sure that that's clear before I say anything, because I don't want anybody to say, Brinkus thinks the government covered it up, or they didn't. The government can't deliver mail on time.
That's funny. So when we were on Alex Jones, we did a show with Alex Jones, and I asked him, and he said yes, because he produced those movies. I think it was Something for Change.
Right. Loose Change.
That's it, Loose Change. And Dan, you said the same thing. Dan said on air, he said, look, man, the government is too stupid to do that. Like they could never pull their shit together to do something like 9/11.
Yeah, there's no way.
Without it leaking.
No way, right? I mean, they can't deliver mail on time. They can't. I mean, just think about it. Like, look, the DMV is a mess. It's run by the government.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a mastermind group. So that's where it's like a conspiracy theorist is like, oh man, Bush was hiding it in. They planned it. I'm like, do you really think George W. Bush sat around and said, you know, it's a good idea. We should fly some planes into the World Trade Center. That might work.
Yeah.
Like, that's not at all what happened. So. But as I sort of present some facts, all that I intend on giving people or wanting people to think about is, oh wow, maybe the story we've been given isn't the whole story. I'm not going to tell you what the story is. I'm just going to tell you what the story is not.
Okay.
And the story, what it is not, is the official stories. 19 guys hijacked some planes, flew them into buildings. The buildings collapsed from heat. That was it. Game over. Right now, so I'm going to first start with 9/11. Now think about this: Pearl Harbor. We know, over time, over decades of time, we know that the official story of Pearl Harbor changed. Right? We know that.
Right.
Story of 9/11. Think about it. It's almost 20 years old. 20 years from now, if it doesn't change, it will be the first world event whose narrative has never changed. So it has to be wrong. It's never been challenged. There hasn't been anything that's an alternative theory, which makes me say, God, that's really weird. Either they nailed it right. I mean, we know 100% what happened. Or don't you think that maybe it's only 90% correct and there's 10% that's kind of craziness that
it didn't happen?
That's what we're going to find out.
Yeah.
That. All right. So here, let's think about this. Here's a fact. In the history of modern architecture, of concrete and steel buildings, in the history, how many buildings have collapsed due to fire in the history of the world?
Man, I don't know that answer.
The Oklahoma City building, but there was an explosion right underneath it, but ultimately it collapsed because of fire. But I mean, there was also an explosion.
Collapsed. There was an explosion.
Yeah, I mean, there's also an explosion.
Right. So in 9/11, prior to 9/11, there are no buildings. You can look it up. There are awesome. There's awesome footage of buildings that have been on fire for days. There have been buildings that have been compromised, but they don't fall. And they don't fall on their own. Not only do they not fall because it's made of concrete and steel, but they don't fall onto their own footprint. So what I would throw out there and say, just think about this. And again, what you're going to hear a lot from me is, I don't know what did happen. All I know is it's awfully strange that buildings fell on their own footprints. One of them, being World Trade Center 7, wasn't even struck by anything, didn't have any explosives planted in it. It just fell. So when you say, well, how many buildings, and prior to that date, 0, and then on that day it's 3, and they all happen in a 2-block radius, one of them not being compromised. And when you read the official report, do you know what the cause of World Trade Center 7 is in the official report?
No, what is it?
I don't know.
Oh, that's what it says. So it physically says in the report, I don't know.
We don't know. Everybody can look it up. I read the report cover to cover. It just says, yeah, World Trade Center 7 fell. We're not sure why.
So to you, what would be the most plausible thing then? If it was not our government, what do you think it was?
I can't even advance a theory of any kind. All that I would say is those buildings, something brought down World Trade Center 7. The answer of I don't know for a building to collapse, that's a little bit of that's a kind of a cop-out answer, right?
Yeah.
All I can tell you is, well, the answer isn't I don't know. It's something compromised the structure of that building. That's what made it fall. And no planes hit it. No bombs were planted. I mean, something caused it for the structure to be compromised. Therefore, the story of these planes flew in the buildings and the buildings fell. Well, that building wasn't struck. It didn't have any explosives. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. What about you, Dan? Do you have any alternate theories, or do you think what happened actually happened?
No, it's never the government story is never the right one. Right.
Right.
I would say, just from what I've heard about it, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a secondary attack of some sort, like additional explosives or whatever the case is, like suicide bombers or something like that.
From inside the building?
Like, the problem with people in science is that if they don't find a very ready and easily understandable fucking explanation for something, they just start making crazy shit up.
Sure.
Like religion,
right.
for example.
Yeah.
So they think that because one time this dude danced and it rained the next day, that dancing causes rain. That's fucking stupid. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's how human beings are trained to think. It's okay to not know. I think I don't know being an answer to that I'm fine with that logic as long as that's true. I don't think it's probably not true. But yeah, if you were what we know about Al-Qaeda is they're known for complex attacks, like primary and secondary attacks, like drawing people in and then blowing shit up. Like the guy one of the things we were worried about at the before that shooting happened at the Mall of the Americas was somebody doing a mass shooting, waiting for a bunch of first responders to arrive, and then detonating an S-vest.
Okay.
Right? Like getting a bunch of people in one spot and then blowing yourself up or whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just about instilling fear or committing the act of terrorism itself. It's about doing something that attacks the infrastructure of the country.
Right.
Whether it's the economy or first responders or whatever it is. So I could definitely see dudes climbing up the buildings or already haven't been there with explosives. Yeah.
So here's something that's interesting to consider is one of the big sort of theories out there is that the planes that hit the building weren't commercial airline planes, right? That's sort of just been put out there. No, they weren't planes. So we actually, as part of one of the shows that we were doing with Sci-Fi, I pitched the idea. I said, you know what's interesting? If you go on the internet and you actually search every photo and video of the planes that struck the building,
Mm-hmm.
there's actually no footage of discernible logos on any of the planes. And immediately people go, oh, well, what do you think? What do you think those things are? And I'm saying, look, I think they're commercial airliners. I think commercial airliners flew into this building. But if I had to prove it in a court of law with visual evidence of the most photographed terrorist event ever, I mean, one building gets hit, then every tourist, every news station, everyone has a camera trained on the second building unknowingly,
Mm-hmm.
right? The plane comes flying in, and there are no pictures or videos of discernible logos. So I said, well, should there be? What if we were to fly a plane at the same height, same time, use the same 2001 technology, shoot it from every angle, and see, should you be able to see the logos? Because it's a little weird. So when you go on the internet, you go down the rabbit hole, and you're like, nah, Brinkus is wrong. You can see logos very clearly. Post it. Like we couldn't find any logos on the planes. That I am not saying they aren't commercial airliners. I'm saying that people who say, hey, they're not commercial airliners, there's no actual visual proof that those are the planes. Then people say, but what happened to the planes? I mean, we know the people who were on those planes perished. We know that. Well, we also know that the transponders were turned off. So in playing into maybe they aren't commercial airliners, why don't you turn a transponder off, fly a plane into the middle of the ocean, who knows where, or God knows where, but those planes disappeared from radar. So it's hard to connect those planes with the planes that hit the building through proof of visual proof. And not only that, there's no DNA recovered from the site. There's no bodies recovered from the site that are identifiable. It's very hard to actually prove that, even though we all kind of know it happened. It's very strange that you can't prove it.
Yes and no. So there's a friend of mine who was supposed to be on that flight. He overslept, the one from Boston to LA that crashed into the building. His name was Brian Curry. He actually went on to write The Green Book and he won 2 Oscars for that movie, The Green Book, year before last. And we were in LA because he was flying back, and then we had a party for him at one of our buddies' houses, and he came into the party and dropped that airline ticket on the table, and then we discussed all of it all the way around. It would be, to me, fucking next to impossible to fake those deaths of those people coming out of Boston. And could you fly it into the ocean? Maybe, but at that time that it happened, I like that one is unbelievable to me. Now the buildings falling at the same time, exactly where they were in motion, I can land some, all right, I can land some maybe credence, I guess, to that one a little bit, but
a lot of people don't even today realize that those 2 buildings were full of government agencies, right?
Yes.
So CIA had stuff in there. The Secret Service had stuff in there. One of the theories is that there was a controlled detonation to protect sensitive classified material, and that
would make sense to me.
But a controlled det for material like that isn't a fucking bomb that would blow up a building. It's a fucking thermite grenade or something like that. That would do no structural damage. I mean, it would cause a much hotter fire. Yeah, maybe.
But that fire did burn for weeks.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the, part of people sort of leaning into it. And part of the plane theory, here's what's interesting about the plane theory. Again, I don't want anybody to say, oh my God, what are you saying? I think planes flew into the building. I'm sold on that. What I'm playing into is okay, well, if you had to prove it, if you 1,000 years from now, they say, what evidence do you have? You're like, okay, do you have any pictures of the actual planes with discernible logos? Not, it looks like a commercial airliner. Do you have the actual pictures? Secondly, if you go into, everybody remembers TWA 800.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's another whole conspiracy where people are like, God, it was shot down. You can see the missile. But what did we get from TWA 800? They reclaimed every scrap of metal from that plane and put it back together in a hangar. They
Right.
scooped it out of the ocean. They put it back together prior to 9/11. And this is another good one to look up. How many planes, just like how many buildings, how many planes have crashed and not been put back together, or not even attempted to be put back together by the FAA?
Yeah, and you're right on that one, because the big one was that one that got
Shanksville.
blown out in Iran.
Right.
So even that one, they were like,
Got
hey,
put back together.
we're going to put it back together. And then the Iranian government came out and we're scooping it up in fields. And they were like, no, we're not fucking doing that shit. We're getting it out of here.
Well, look.
I understand. Every one of those planes gets put back together. In this instance, I know the one that fell in the field, the passengers crashed in that field. I know they put that one back together. But
find the photo of it being put back together, because it's not. It actually in the official report it claims it disintegrated.
The one in the field.
Look it up. The one in the field in Shanksville.
Yeah.
Look at the look at the pictures of it disintegrating.
What is it? It was United 93, right? Yeah. United 93.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up about all this. So United 93, just prior to the plane crashing, there were 30 phone calls made from that plane.
Yes.
To loved ones.
Yep.
Voicemails, live conversations had. Let's see. On Flight 77, there were 3 calls. Flight 175, there were 5 calls. And there were 3 calls from Flight 11. That's all 4 planes made phone calls right before this shit happened. So the idea that we could fly them out into the middle of the ocean seems implausible to me.
Same.
Maybe.
Totally.
Yep.
Maybe. Who knows, right? But
totally.
I don't like I know the government is too incompetent to do something like this, and it's
they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's not just about incompetence. It's also about you can't keep that many people's mouths shut. But if you're a terror organization and everybody who's involved is going to die, that's pretty easy to keep quiet.
Sure,
because everybody's fucking dead.
Yeah, exactly.
So anything they could have slipped in there, none of that would surprise me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just.
And a plane flying into a building, by the way, like the 2 that flew into the towers. With the towers going down and the whole fucking shit going up, like, I don't know how you would even attempt to put a plane back together from that.
But what do you try?
Well, they were trying to dig out survivors. I remember that for how many days that was. So,
I don't know. It was long.
And they were they had trouble getting workers in and out, so they were clearing it out with like wheelbarrows and traditional things that you wouldn't do, because much like the COVID-19 thing, you were faced with a situation that you hadn't been in before, at least in America. In America, yeah. So
totally.
The tried and true methods are out the window at that point.
Exactly. What was interesting in one of the shows that we were pitching is just trying to debunk the wacko theories that they weren't planes, and saying, okay, well, we're going to show pictures that they're commercial airliners. Well, those don't exist. Okay, we're going to show pictures of the planes reassembled. Well, those don't exist. Well, we're going to prove that the buildings fell because of heat or something. Well, no buildings that's never happened before. You keep reaching these points where you're like, God, a lot of things happened on that day that had never happened before. Is the official story 100% correct? Or are we going to learn, oh, you know what? I don't know what the alternative truth is or what the other story is. It just seems like, wow, the proving of it is difficult. Now, I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm saying, God, that's an interesting question to at least ask.
Oh, for sure.
Another interesting question for me, and I've never gotten a satisfactory answer about this, is why within a matter of hours were 24 of Osama bin Laden's family members skirted out of this country.
Flown out.
Yeah. That's a real
like
weird one for me.
The Saudi
Yeah.
ambassador made a phone call, and he was like, hey, we have to get everybody related to him out of this country now.
Yeah.
And look, there were some attacks against mostly Sikhs and Indians because Americans are too dumb to tell the difference between Arabs and other people in the early 2000s. But it wasn't like, I don't think anybody was going to go hunt down a great grandnephew of Osama bin Laden and stab him to death or anything, right?
Right.
Like that whole, I don't know what the deal with that is.
So
honestly,
wrapping up 9/11, here's an interesting thing that I've certainly observed. I mean, I'm asking curious questions, and I'm not offering any sort of like, oh, this is what happened. I'm saying, look, I've done tons of research, and the fact that there aren't pictures, the fact that there were no buildings prior to that, the fact that these are the only planes to not have been reassembled, it makes it an impossible story to really try to solve,
to ignore
because of those that right, and it's like, oh my God, there's a lot of missing stuff on that. What I find even more interesting is I don't know how interested people are on actually finding out the truth. I kind of feel like whatever the truth is, it's probably something we're better off perhaps not knowing it on that one, because it happened, we're past it, we're moving on.
Yeah.
But all I know is the official story. There are lots of holes in it. There are a lot of things that it admits. I mean, to admit a building fell and we don't know why. All right, well, someday we'll learn why, and that why may, open up a rabbit hole for us that we go down forever. But we as a people and we as a country, we probably don't really want to know, and we're like, we're not going to invest that much mental energy into it, because it kind of is what it is at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to have you on the show to discuss this. Like, I enjoy the fact that we have three people who are open to possibilities, but not one way down of like, no, this is how it happened and there's no other way. Because we get that a lot. We've done some Collins shows, and we get that a lot where people are like, you don't understand. I knew a cousin of a brother who was there and did this and this. And it's like, man, you have no proof or evidence of that, but it's fun to entertain different theories, because we really don't know, and we don't have the answer. If we did, somebody else would have it too.
Right, and we should. I mean, I think on science, look, I've made a living off of doing science. Do you know how many times we revised science?
Yeah.
I'm like, look, people take science as gospel, and I take it as, well, it's the most recent suggestion that seems to work the most consistently, and then we're going to come across something where it doesn't really work. You look at the laws of aerodynamics with lift and drag, and the bumblebee still doesn't fit into our current equation.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, but we haven't modified the equation, but we know it's not right.
Yeah. Neither is the hummingbird. There's also no kind of agreement between quantum physics and like gravity, for example. Like, we have no idea how to get those two together.
Exactly. And that's when I get frustrated by, just as much as the people who are like, dude, just because you question it, you must be a conspiracy theory nut. I'm like, dude, I question science. I question everything.
Yeah.
I just want to know where we get to the truth by, if you ask enough questions, and if the answers aren't totally satisfactory, then you find out the truth somehow. If the truth stands up and you constantly get satisfactory answers, then you're good. Like, okay, so it can stand up to scrutiny. And people who aren't willing to question frustrate me just as much as people who automatically assign, oh, it's a conspiracy because my Uncle Louie knew a guy who told him this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I agree. So, look, since this topic is everywhere now, let's talk about COVID-19.
Sure.
I've read a lot of conspiracy theories on this, that it could be, some type of germ warfare, that it was made in a lab and then it was, put out to the world. A lot of people have used like the Social Security thing of like, great, it's a good way to get rid of old people, or the sick in countries, people who aren't contributing to society as much as everybody else, blah, blah, blah. Do you think there is any conspiracy to the COVID-19 right now?
So to me, there's an extreme amount of just odd things happening. that make me say, I think there just might be more to the story, and I don't even know if it's intentional. But to say a virus broke out and half the world just shut down.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so let's take the numbers of the number of people who have died, the number of people who've been infected, and let's say, what are the actions that are taking place? If you told me, and this is a true stat as of last night, in Los Angeles,
Yep.
90 people so far have died from coronavirus. There are 10 million people just in LA.
Yeah.
That's 0.0000009.
Yeah.
Now, and if you said to me, but they had to shut down the whole city, a true fact, in the month of March, more people committed suicide than died from the coronavirus. And when you say, God, when we start doing the math on 500,000 people in the world to date have died from AIDS, 3 million people to date have died from heart disease, 7,000 people a day die in America every day, 15,000 people die from falling down the stairs, 40,000 people have died in car crashes. When you start throwing out big numbers and then you start comparing them to the corona numbers, I'm not saying that that coronavirus isn't real, that it doesn't exist. I'm saying that the reaction based on the reality of the numbers just seems so far out of whack that it requires us to at least question, does the world really need to be shut down? It just boggles my mind.
I always ask anytime a situation like this occurs, cui bono, who benefits from this? Like, just that's the skeptic's first line of defense. Like,
Sure.
All right, let's figure this out. Who benefits from this happening?
Yep.
Because then you could find out if there's any kind of motive behind it. If we're looking at any kind of, and I am not a globalist, like I'm not Alex Jones, is what I'm saying.
Right.
I don't think there's some kind of international cabal working together to make a new world. I don't believe that. But let's say there was, for sake of argument. What better way to get people used to and force people into that kind of thing than this right now? Like you're converting everybody over to telemedicine. You're converting everybody over to shopping more online. Mm-hmm. You're getting them dependent to digital media. You're getting them dependent to daily government fucking briefings.
Yeah.
Here's a question I have for you guys.
Yeah.
Think of this. Just think of this for a second. So we can also reverse engineer, okay, what's going on? Do we think that this is some kind of Trumpian, conspiracy or master plan? No way. I mean, 0% chance. There's no way Donald Trump's like, you know what would be great right now? A massive pandemic.
Yeah, let's fuck up this economy.
Yeah.
Let's fuck up
because that would only hurt his election.
Yeah.
His re-election, yeah.
100%. So you're like, all right, you eliminate that. Then you say, all right, I find this odd. So Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, shut down California, and I ask, can you do that? Like where does it say? And the governor, for whatever reason he feels like he should, can shut the state down, can shut every business down. And when people say, well, the president has wartime powers, the governor can exercise his own discretion, I'm like, okay, so let's take that to its ridiculous extreme. What if he's just in a bad mood?
Yeah.
Is he allowed to just say, hey, all businesses are closed? Because the data right at this second certainly does not support everybody must remain inside or else we're all dying. It's like very few people have died, and you've shut down the whole state without anybody voting. None of the state legislature had to say. It's just strange.
Yeah, and a lot of those, two points on that. One is a lot of those governor levels, like statewide level takeovers, and even at the mayoral level, give them weird powers, like the ability to shut down gun stores, for example. Which seems like, why would that even be in there? That of all the stuff that you could add into a piece of legislation, why would emergency authority allow you to shut down gun stores?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of strange things going on. I will say this, today in New York, their stat was 562 people died today of coronavirus in the state of New York. Is there a possibility that California is just following suit? Because all of the international travel in and out is pretty much coming through LAX or LaGuardia or JFK in New York. Are they following suit just to be careful? I'm not really sure. There is many questions on this. I find with this one, with China in particular, just fucking China, dude. Right. I have a hard time believing that this wasn't planned and just backfired somewhere. Like the uncooked bat story from a local market, and then it started with a shrimp, salesman out of some fucking off the boat thing. It just seems too far-fetched to me to kill this many people and spread around the world this quickly.
So I would say I would side with when people say, "Do you think it was intentional or not?" I'm going to render an opinion on this. I personally don't think it's possible that this could have been an intentional release.
I agree.
The reason being is you can't control the outcome.
Right.
So like it could be intentional. So let's say it's unintentional, but let's say that this unintentional thing is kind of like any other world event where people are taking advantage of, event X is happening. Now's the perfect time to implement the Y thing that I've been, sitting on forever. When you look at sort of shutdowns, and I think it is very useful for us to say, all right, let's say that Gavin Newsom and all the other governors, the governor of Virginia shut down the state till June 10th.
Yeah.
I mean, it's April 3rd now, or 4th, or whatever day it is.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even know what day it is. It's like we've shut down till June 10th. So my question is, if they're being proactive on, I guess, saving lives,
mm-hmm.
why does that end with coronavirus? I mean, why do we say, well, coronavirus is gone, so I'm now fine with people dying from any other condition, but I'm not fine with corona? Because as soon as you lift it and you're like, dude, more people are dying from hepatitis than died from coronavirus, well, I'm fine with hepatitis.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's a very insincere concern of like, hey, I'm only concerned about, if you're that concerned about human life, then why do you let people drive at all?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it's the old adage, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? I mean, whomever's making a noise, or whomever's making noise out there, and at this point, obviously, it's only the media that's doing that.
I guess
that's who gets the grease.
I agree. I just to me personally, I'm with you. Like, if you're not in this age range or have this respiratory problems or whatever, like go back to work at this point, because you're right. People are going to die more from car accidents tomorrow, the flu, smoking, you name it. And then we have some breaking news on this. Another CNN anchor just got it. Brooke Baldwin. Now this is different from Cuomo, and I'll tell you why. She's hot, and I don't want to see attractive young women get this and have to stay home, especially when they could be out in these streets. Mm-hmm. So that one, I hate seeing supermodels die and porn stars as well. So I should probably preface it with that. I probably should have with you.
Those are the two. Well, those are kind of a given.
Yeah, but we don't know each other that well, John. So I want you to get to know me first.
Exactly. Good to make sure.
So my theory is this: I think it was built in a lab, because Dan and I did a show about 6 months ago where they were genetically altering animals and humans to put like human faces on monkeys and shit like that. And then that scientist got killed. The one who was doing the CRISPR babies got killed. They scooped up the one for the coronavirus. I think
the guy that was the whistleblower, and he died.
Yeah, he died real quick. I think this was something made in a lab, and then it got away from them. And now here we are. Because I find it weird that it's only killing a segment of the population that really doesn't contribute as much as the rest of society. And if one country was going to do it, to me, it would be China, where all it is work. Like,
Well, China's got a history of eugenics anyways.
Yeah.
Even recently. So that wouldn't be very surprising to hear that they're up to something over there.
And I think the verdict right now is, this was totally unplanned. There's no way they could possibly have planned it. It got away from them somehow.
Agreed.
And there's a collective taking advantage of misfortune going on politically.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay? And it's so far overreaching beyond anything this country has ever seen. It's just, to me, it requires us to say, I mean, the fact that this has happened, do we want this to be able to happen again? I mean, don't you think somebody's going to run on the platform of, look, if the next pandemic comes along and we can isolate it to, only people 6'5" and taller are dying, right. I'm not going to lock everybody up. I'm going to say, if you're 6'5" or taller, you got to stay in. Everybody else, party on.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think not that I necessarily wish for things to go wrong, but it might be important for this pandemic for it to get to a breaking point where people freak the fuck out and never want this again. Because if you remember, for years before the American Revolution, most people in general were irritated by the English and the tax stuff, but they were willing to accept it because everything was generally peaceful and whatever the fuck, right? Once things started to get bleak, people were like, fuck this. This is never going to happen again. We're going to organize our entire government around this never happening again. Right. So I think maybe reaching a precipice like that is an important step, because we've gone down these weird rabbit holes a lot the last decade. The cancel culture, Me Too bullshit, right? For example. And if we let it go too far, then it becomes part of daily life. And I don't think we're not doing anything yet to make sure this just doesn't become daily life, because I don't want to live in a world where people aren't out doing stuff.
Same.
Like that's bullshit.
Or wearing masks. I don't want to wear masks through the streets every goddamn day.
We may as well just die if that's going to be the case. So
I agree.
Think of this. Think of this just to wrap up this thing. Think of this. Think of how irresponsible it is and look, I am neither a Trump hater or a Trump supporter. I'm much more just a centrist who's like, some things are good, some things are bad. And, sure. I can kind of take it with a grain of salt. But think about how irresponsible it is to message, hey, the fatality rate on this thing is 2 or 3%. That's why we have to lock down the country, because 2 or 3% is 10 times higher than the flu. This thing is super deadly. Then yesterday, Fauci's like, oh, actually, the death rate is more like the common flu, and it's probably more 1% or below. Yeah. So I say, well, if we started there at the fatality rate really was only 1% or below, would you ever have shut something down?
And it's
probably not.
It's really basic statistics too. Like there's something called breakage, and it's data that doesn't make its way into your data set because people don't report the right way, or they false positive or negative, whatever the case is. In marketing, it's about 30%. In this case, who the fuck knows? I mean, it's probably about the same as a census. You know what I mean? Like, how accurate is that stupid bullshit? And getting people to self-report stuff. Look, remember for the first month of this, there weren't tests out there. So most of those people just went through it all without fucking ever getting tested.
Yeah.
And the overreaching powers, so think about this. So the scary virus, if we had to devise the ultimate boogeyman, wouldn't you say, okay, it's a virus, but if you don't think you have it, you're a carrier and you could infect somebody else. And there was a story yesterday. It said 1 in 3 of all negative tests are false negative tests. So even if you don't have symptoms, even if you test negative, you still probably have it and are probably going to infect somebody. But still, even with all of that being said, the bottom line is, dude, if I'm going to read the package on this, what's the fatality rate? I can handle being sick.
Yeah.
But what's the chance of me dying from this thing? 99.9% you're going to live. I'll take those odds.
Yeah.
Like, that's all right. I'm good with that.
Yeah, and look, to put a bow on this, for me personally, if I had a dream outcome that came out of this, I'd love for us to completely shut out China altogether as the United States. We don't depend on them to make shit anymore, goods, deficit money, anything else. Like, you can't trust that country and what is going on. And you never could, to be honest with you. Now with all the shit they're doing genetically over there, I just want to lock that country out and, hopefully bring goods and everything back here. I know that's probably a pipe dream, and I understand that, but that would be my dream outcome out of this, because I'm tired of the bullshit that is going on over there and what we don't know on a day-to-day basis. So I'd like to just see it just flip the switch.
That would collapse our economy in a matter of weeks.
It would, but
here's why.
But if it's going to collapse anyways.
China would call in the markers on all the debt that we owe them, which is only about $4 trillion, is not that much money.
Right. Which is what we're spending on this so far, on this virus.
But they would call in the markers for their debt. We would have to tell them, no, we're not paying it. and then our credit rating globally would be 0, we would lose our status as the world global reserve currency, and all this stuff would happen. So that's not going to happen, I can tell you now.
I wish it would.
I think the good outcome from this is people learn humans die all the time. And they die from viruses, they die from accidents, they die from negligence, they die accidentally.
Yep.
They die from all kinds of crazy stuff
Sometimes,
all the time.
sometimes they're married to OJ.
Or Carol Baskin.
Right.
Yeah. Or Carol Baskin.
Or Carol Baskin.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, if there's one good thing to come out of this, it's that we're all incredibly curious about having meat grinders in a backyard.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's pretty weird.
Exactly. It is a perfect point to get to our first sponsor. Since you're on the show today and you work for Killcliff, as do we,
right.
We're going to get to killcliffcbd.com. Killcliffcbd.com. Promo code Drinkin Bros will get you 30% off and free shipping. They also sent Dan this nifty gold chain. If you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, Drinkin Bros Podcast, you'll see Dan is blinged up with a Killcliff chain. And you can get blinged up with cans of CBD, 25 milligrams in every single can, shipped directly to your door. You will not piss hot if you are in the military, first responder area, or if you're an NBA player. Fuck it. Across the board.
I don't think they test for weed anymore.
Who?
The NBA.
No, the NFL does. Or does not. They just struck
No,
that
the
one, but I
the
believe the NBA still does,
and
right?
I think Major League Baseball and the NBA both got rid of it.
Oh, good for them. Fucking A.
Good for them.
Drink up. Go to killcliffcbd.com. Promo code Drinkin Bros, 30% off grape, mango, and the orange kush. All of them are amazing and knocks it down to shit. What you reckon there? About $2.90 a can, $2.80 a can? Cheaper than a can of Monster.
Yes.
And it's got 25 milligrams of CBD in it.
It does.
Absolutely. Killcliff is doing incredibly good things during this pandemic, helping
Yes, they
out
are.
first responders, and it's an amazing brand. So support Killcliff. Go to killcliff.com.
I think we should open up a fucking mortuary.
Right now would be the time.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's make a fucking. Is there any way to put an incinerator in the back of a truck?
Yeah, why not?
Just
drive by.
Just drive around town. It says "Got Dead?" question mark on the side of it.
Why not?
Dude, this is going to be
Hop in the back.
The opening scene of Life of Brian.
Yeah.
By Monty
Bring
Python.
out your dead.
Bring out your dead.
Yeah. But it's like ice cream truck music.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, of
So all
course.
the kids run outside. I'm like, hey, go get Uncle Jimmy. I know he's dead.
Yeah, I know
Bring
he's
him out
dead.
here. We'll burn him up for you right quick.
Drag out Uncle Jimmy for me, would you? Drag him out.
And we'll put them in. We'll cut the tops off of these Killcliff CBD cans and put the ashes in there and hand them back to them.
Yeah, it's a nice urn. I heard there's
crazy.
an urn shortage right now.
Yeah.
I want to get to the next one here. Right behind me is one of my favorite signed pictures. One of the Drinkin Bros set it in anonymously last year for Christmas. We hung it up. Signed by Buzz Aldrin. This is the moon landing.
Woo! It's a good one.
What is the conspiracy theory behind the moon landing, other than all the footage was faked and we never landed on the moon and Stanley Kubrick did it?
Man, I'll tell you what. So we did a show on the moon landing, and we actually you should go back. You can look it up. Fact or Fake Paranormal Files, all about the moon landing. And there is an expert who we had on who was commissioned by NASA to just put an end to the argument and look, we went to the moon, just give everybody the evidence. He was like the independent third party.
Uh-huh.
And we found this dude, and he ended up coming on. This is one of the only shows where I say, wow, here are some serious questions that we have to ask.
Really?
Now, here are some serious questions. Now, I'm going to say this first, just so people don't jump out of their skin. We went to the moon. Yes, we rock. We're Americans. We're awesome. We went to the moon. So don't say, Breakers doesn't think we went to the moon. We went to the moon. Now,
Okay.
Consider this. Think of this. We're not going to the moon was not settling a bar bet. We were not like, I got $10 riding on this. This was establishing us as the only true superpower, right?
Yeah.
First one to the moon wins.
And JFK was the one driving this of like, hey, we gotta beat the Russians and the Chinese to this.
So if you, as a TV producer myself, when you're told, hey, we're making a show and we have to have our money shot. We've got to have, if we don't have this shot, it doesn't work. So if the president gets everybody in the room and says, guys, listen, Wednesday, 6 o'clock, Walter Cronkite is going to announce that we landed on the moon. If we don't have footage of it, no one's ever going to believe us. And I don't care what you have to do. You make sure we have footage. I don't need to know. I don't need to be in on it. I don't need to know anything. Nobody has to tell me anything. In fact, you don't have to tell anybody else. We cannot fail. So as a TV producer, I say, all right, so now let's run the odds on this. You've got a camera, that's a quote camera, that gets put on a spaceship that goes to the moon, that's used with no viewfinder from a non-professional in an environment that's never had anything ever used before. Mm-hmm. And the framing is perfect. It's in focus. It's like nothing goes wrong. It goes seamless. And then you say, okay, so how do those images get back to us? They get beamed down they first went to Australia. Then it went over to Houston in Texas. Then it goes over to Cape Canaveral. Then the images, this is all true. Then the image is projected on the screen. The news organizations all had their cameras pointed at a white screen that was showing these images that went from the moon to Australia to Texas to Florida. That's why it looks so grainy and so messed up, and it's at a weird angle. Then you say, okay, so that all happened in real time seamlessly, and nothing went wrong. So let's go back and find the original tapes, the original footage of it. You all can Google this. NASA lost the original tapes. Those tapes don't exist. And so now you say, as a TV producer, you're like, God, if I had to make sure that that shot was I had to make. Can you imagine? We went to the moon. We have a piece of equipment, and the camera busted. Can you imagine? Like, we made it. Trust us. We don't have the footage. What it leans toward is, this is true. In all of the training missions for the moon landing, NASA used fake footage. That is true. You can look all of this up. Fake footage was used. It was in circulation. And if you had to show it, the question is, would you really leave it to chance? Or would you just have something in your back pocket just in case something went wrong? I mean, just in case.
We're talking about Richard Nixon right now, by the way. For those at home who aren't following along, and I don't know if you know his history with the use of electronics, but he's not been entirely ethical with those. You understand?
Okay. Was he there in 69?
He was, yeah. He got elected in 68.
Yeah.
And he took over in January, and then July is when the moon landing happened.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so he was president at the time. Come on, tricky dick, brother.
Yeah.
Who knows what he was up to? But yeah, there's no question we went to the moon. Actually, one of the more fascinating things about the fact that we got to the moon is that despite modern advances in physics, we still use the 3 laws of Newtonian motion. Those are the only 3 laws really that got used, and those are from the 17th century. That's pretty fucked up, right?
Uh-huh.
Pretty messed up.
So I got a Hollywood question for you.
Yep.
I've done a bunch of movies and all that stuff. Then how do you explain the documentary that came out last year? It was a big, huge thing for IMAX, right?
The one with Ryan Gosling?
No.
Where they wouldn't plant.
That's a scripted one.
They wouldn't was repurposed for IMAX and all the footage.
Correct. It's called Apollo Space Mission.
The one with Ryan Gosling, they wouldn't show him planting the American flag.
Yeah, because they would have pissed off China.
They wouldn't show that scene right there.
Exactly. It would have pissed off China. So because I watched this documentary, I thought it was unbelievable. And I don't know how you would fake that footage today.
So watch our show. So if you watch our show, so this is what we did with we had 3 very, very famous clips from all the moon landings, and we used the same technology and said, well, how would you fake it then?
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
How would you fake it?
Yeah.
And here's the answer on that. It's super easy. We couldn't believe it. How it wow, there are no stars in the sky, so you just need a black background. All you need to do is the quote, the lack of gravity all you have to do is play it back slower, shoot it at a higher frame rate, and so it plays back, 50% speed, and it looks the exact same. All you have to do, we lined it up, and we're like, this is making this fake footage thing is actually pretty easy. Here's what I came away from doing that show with. I'm not saying, we went to the moon, and a whole bunch of the footage that we have is 100% real. What this dude concluded was there was fake footage in circulation, and there's a decent chance that some of the footage that we've seen isn't entirely real. And when you think about it, and you just use your mind and use your brain, and you say, if I'm not allowed to fail, it's not if I can't go to the moon and fail because the camera broke, the relay broke,
right,
something broke. Why wouldn't you have something in your back pocket?
Yeah,
just to make sure.
No, that I can get behind. If you have certain pieces of stock, right, or pre-shot footage that you could bridge the gaps between a live telecast and everything else, that makes sense. What you do bring up, though, at the beginning of the conversation is super interesting to me. How did they know how to use those cameras on the moon? Using those cameras now, because those are, I think it was Super 8s they were shooting on, film wise.
It wasn't even Super 8, because remember, it was an electronic signal.
Yeah, we barely have that now, for Christ's sakes. I mean, look at our footage today. If you're watching this on our thing, we're on FaceTime today, and it's still hit and miss, right?
Blips out.
Yeah. How did they magically perfect that then? I can see them going back and forth on it. I did watch the doc, though, and it was pretty compelling footage. I don't know when they would have gone back and shot it, or unless they...
I mean, look, if you want to take it to the extreme, I mean, I've seen a dinosaur squash a Jeep, and it looked really real. I mean, I swear that T-Rex was there. And I'm telling you,
I get all that.
Jurassic Park is real.
Oh, I get all that. Just looking at this footage, I look at how expensive it would be to outfit these guys, try to find the same materials, and then have astronauts go back and re-question it. It would be tough, but I can see them bridging the gap with stock footage. That I'll do. What is your final verdict on it? What do you think happened?
So I think my final verdict is, I think it is completely legitimate to question if fake footage is mixed in or not. I think it's totally legitimate, just as out of being smart.
Yeah.
Just from being dude, we can't have Walter we can't have Walter Cronkite go on the air and say, we made it to the moon, but we don't have any footage.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a disaster. I agree with that. But do you think any of the footage was real is the main question?
Yes. 100%. Okay. 100%. Probably 99.9% of it is real. I'm saying, listen, if there was fake footage in circulation, and if we had to hit a deadline, it defies logic to not have a backup.
Well, this is before internet culture where people could just go easily look things up, and news agencies now even use stock footage for B-roll all the time.
Oh yeah, all the time. Absolutely.
So it's that's not surprising.
All the time.
By the way, one of the main conspiracy theories about that picture right there is that there's no stars in the background. If he was on the moon, why aren't there stars out there?
They wouldn't show up.
No, it's light pollution from so much other stuff going on around. It's basic fucking science. Look, those are the theories, the conspiracy shit that irritate me, like flat Earth, for example.
Yeah,
it's so
flat Earth, dude.
We can disprove that in 20 minutes. We just have to walk outside, and in 20 minutes, I can disprove it.
Sure.
Just with a fucking stick on the ground, literally, and we can watch the way the sun moves around it, and you can tell that it's a fucking sphere.
The flat Earth one is just very we could spend 10 seconds on it. Here's all I have to say.
Yep.
Shadow on the moon.
Yeah.
There you go.
The round shadow.
It's pretty easy. And the other one we hear about the moon landing is this flag flying. They were like, "There's no gravity on the moon; it doesn't fly." If you look closely in the picture, there's a metal rod at the top of the flag that is connected to the flagpole. That's how they kept the flag up, and you can see that in the photo. So
yeah, they knew that was going to be the case because they're astronauts.
Yeah.
and do you want to know what's interesting is when I say something like, dude, you got to have a backup plan. If someone says, oh my God, that's silly to consider that, Imagine not considering that.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Right?
From a producing standpoint,
2 is 1, 1 is none.
yeah. So I 100% agree with that. I was just curious because a lot of people have said they believe the entire thing was fake and that Stanley Kubrick shot it and blah, blah, blah.
It would have looked way cooler if Stanley Kubrick would have
Way cooler, yeah. It didn't look that cool. So that's why yeah.
You know, when you go back to, I did a documentary on the end of World War II on VJ Day, and this is 100% true. The picture of Iwo Jima was staged. We actually spoke to you can look this up too. The actual photographer saw a similar moment and said, "Ooh, that would be so awesome if we got that picture," and he staged it.
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah. The fucking flag on Iwo Jima being put up. You know the story, right?
Yes.
Like, they did it the day before, and they're like, hey, we need to really capture that, so they just did it again.
No shit.
Yeah, videographer.
It was staged.
Yeah, the whole thing was
makes
staged.
sense.
As a matter of fact, one of the staff sergeant, oh God, I can't remember. I think his name was Mike something. I can't remember his name, but he was one of the first guys up on top of the hill. He led the charge up the hill, and he helped plant the flag. But he was doing something else the second day, so he's not in that fucking famous bronze statue.
You're kidding.
That you see, yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's hilarious, and also think of the power of the image, right? I mean, we know. I mean, especially now today. If you see something, it's like, oh, well, you know, I guess that did happen. Think about how much we're more skeptical than ever. Think about in the 60s and 70s. I mean, if you had a picture of something, I mean, it was gospel.
Yeah. No, you're right.
It was period. So to me, I think if people don't even consider it, and I'm not saying it did happen, I'm saying, man, that would be foolish for it not to have had a backup plan.
How cool! Yeah. Like everybody,
I agree with that.
Everybody always dreams about, wouldn't it be cool? This is a military thing. I don't know if normal people do this. Maybe for something else, but like, wouldn't it be cool to go back to an old battle, but with modern weapons? You just fuck people up.
Oh yeah.
I think it would be cool as shit to take Final Cut, Premiere, and Photoshop to like the 1950s, and just have America thinking that there's weird shit going on.
You could have fucked up every piece of news available.
Yeah, like if just like infiltrate the New York Times. He was like, "Hey man, I'm getting this from a confidential source in Japan," and we all start thinking Japan or Japanese people have lizard heads or some shit.
Yeah,
like it like make a video of some dude pulling his human face off. And it's like a lizard underneath while he's relaxing at home and drinking motor oil or some shit.
Or if you would have put the Mars rover footage back then and said, hey, you know what? After the moon, we went to Mars the next day. And it was even incredible. And you showed that footage. You'd be like, no way. America's amazing. We can never stop them.
Yeah.
Let's stay in the outer space theme then.
All right.
And we got to go to UFOs. You know that, right? Like we've got to talk about UFOs.
Of course.
Is there little green men, yes or no? No, you're saying no.
I'm saying, here's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to be pretty definitive on this.
Okay.
I'm going to tell everybody, there are no little green men flying in little tin saucers in up in the sky.
What did you say? They were able to fucking defeat space and time, but they forgot to turn the lights off when they showed up in our atmosphere.
Exactly. Like trillions of, not billions, trillions of light years away.
Yeah.
They fly all the way here. Can you imagine that? They're like, hey, Frank, did you turn off the lights? I totally forgot.
Yeah.
Like, duh. Like it's too, like when we're talking about intelligent beings from another planet, like we somehow humanize them, and we're like, they look awfully human. They're little humans with big heads and big eyes, and their spaceships look, very similar to stuff that's like Buck Rogers-y, and oh my God, that must be. And when everybody's like, oh no, but I saw these lights in the sky, you can look up. There was a news sighting from, I think it's like, I think it was from like Texas to Florida along the Gulf Coast. It's like everyone's on lockdown, and it's like, oh, there was a whole string of lights. It's like, yeah, there were a whole string of lights. There were planes or flares or whatever. I mean, like the amount of UFO investigating that I've done, when I tell you, people either set things up to make it look like it's a UFO, or it's just an honest mistake. I mean, it's a plane with lights, and it's just weird atmospheric disturbances. It's weather phenomenon. It's whatever. All that I'm saying is the premise of Fact or Faked was that with all of the billions of cell phones that exist in the world and all the footage we have, certainly someone has footage that definitively shows us that that UFOs are real. A UFO has to have landed somewhere. There's nothing out there that makes you say, oh yeah, there's a flying saucer. And here's why. Because there aren't. They're not.
We've never.
So you're saying there's no flying saucers from outer space whatsoever, or some form of planet or dimension?
Here's what I'm saying. What I will say is, I think that the narrative of little green men and saucers is silly. Now, I think the idea of aliens is totally legit. I think the idea of like aliens being here, I would believe that there's some kind of portal, wormhole, dimension, something that we can't understand. And the idea of the aliens are among us, or we are the aliens, or who knows what's happening. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, there's something so far beyond my comprehension, I can't understand it, that I'd buy into and say, yeah. I mean, maybe there are.
That's the thing with people who say there are aliens among us, right? There's two, and to me, there's two schools of thought there. One is the little green men thing. That's ridiculous. There's no way, because we would have seen that by now. The other one is that if you think about it logically, a civilization that would be old enough to have the technology to do something like that would be so far away from us. They would have to be so technologically advanced that they would find out new ways of bending gravity to make travel faster, right?
Totally.
So the idea of them being able to take on a different look, or whatever the case is, or whatever is happening there, that's like, oh, of course they would be able to do something like that, right? But again, that's an easy cop-out. That's like saying, yeah, it probably happened, but we'll never be able to prove it. That's nothing. You're saying nothing when you say that.
Right.
But what we do know is there are almost certainly aliens. Like, it would be weird.
There's certainly aliens.
It would be weird if there wasn't. We found
they're just not flying these aircrafts. Is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe
that's
not. I mean,
okay.
Maybe it's something that we couldn't perceive.
Yeah, because I saw the Pentagon just release that footage about 6 or 8 months ago. Did you see it? Where the pilot in San Diego, they captured it on that plane and said, I don't know what this is. And what are your theories on that then, or what that is?
So all of that kind of footage, I'm just chalking up to, I think that we just say, I don't know. I'm going to ascribe to it's not little green men in a flying saucer. Is it some sort of alien technology that came through, some wormhole and is flying around? Maybe. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I think that the idea that there are no such thing as aliens is silly.
Yeah, that's stupid. There
have to be, right?
I mean, we've already found pretty definitive. We found pretty definitive evidence of life on other planets already, and on the moon as well, that life has existed there at some point. One of the prevailing theories actually is that asteroids that originated from Mars slammed into the Earth, and that's where the first organic material came from, when it was still, a reasonable planet. But if you think about like the Drake equation, there's an equation to determine in a galaxy how many habitable planets with likely life on them there would be. Just in the Milky Way galaxy, which is the one we currently reside in. We're looking at other options, but for now we're here. There's about 10,000, right? There's 2 trillion galaxies in the known universe. So if you multiply those two numbers, that's a 2 with 16 zeros behind it. That's how many planets there should be in the known universe with life on it. And the further we get away from us, the older that life is, the more advanced, the more evolved, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So, I mean, this is that part of the conversation to me is ridiculous, that there might not be aliens.
Right. And to me, the answer is very clearly, if it is greater than 1, then it's infinite.
Yeah.
The answer is not, there are 4 planets that have life.
Yeah. If
infinite.
there's more than 1, yeah.
So
if there's more than 1, it goes on forever.
What about alien abduction then?
So alien abduction.
Hey, can I stop you right quick before that? Because I read something super funny about, and this technically doesn't have anything to do with alien abduction.
Great.
But someone happened to ask Mr. Joe Exotic who he would want to play him in a movie or film, or movie or television series. And his response was, I don't know why this made me think of aliens, but his response was Brad Pitt.
Yep.
And the second one was not not David Spade. He said Joe Dirt.
Yeah, Joe Dirt. Yeah.
And that made me think of a guy who I bet I could trick Joe Exotic into thinking he had been abducted.
Probably.
If you just hang out with him enough and talk about, like, dude, I think, like, if he just blacked out drinking one night, you're like, dude, I think you were abducted because I put you over here, you were sleeping, I came back, you were in completely different clothes on the other side of the room. What the fuck happened? You probably got abducted.
Yeah.
That fucking dumb fuck would believe that.
And I can actually believe that Brad Pitt would play him. I really do. If you give him that mullet, because in real life they're about the same age. I think you could ugly up Brad Pitt, and that could be his Charlize Theron monster movie. Where he's gotten that ugly. I bet you he could Oscar that shit.
I don't know.
Look, they're gonna do it.
Kathy Bates is a shoo-in to play Carol Baskin.
Oh yeah.
No, they've already. So Kate McKinnon already bought the rights from SNL. She's playing Carol Baskin. Yeah.
Man.
And she bought her off the podcast, so it's going to be a limited series. Look for that as soon as whatever this pandemic is over. Before we go back to the alien abduction, that'll give us a point to go to ghostbed.com/Drinkin Bros. Finest mattresses on the planet. If you are abducted by an alien, before we get to it, you might as well be sleeping in a ghost bed because you're going to get raped, prodded, killed, or flown to another planet. And you might as well have the greatest night's sleep of your life before you get taken from this earth. Everything is 25% off. Mattresses, pillows, sheets, covers. The adjustable bases are 50% off. And as always, they have a 36-month pay-as-you-go program. No interest at ghostbed.com. Knocks it down to about $20 if you're getting your surplus or stimulus checks in the mail. Or
It's
direct
definitely
deposited.
not surplus.
Stimulus. Deposited into your account. That knocks it down about $20 a month. Sleep in comfort at ghostbed.com/Drinkin Bros, where everything is 25% off. Alien abductions, is that a real thing?
Man, there are some really compelling books. There's a whole community. There's the psychologists around the world who have taken testimony from people and the similarities and the stories and all of that. Here's what I would where I sort of land on it. I think there is some sort of crazy phenomenon. I definitely do not think it's little green men in a spaceship coming down, walking into a room. Maybe there is some interdimensional thing. Maybe there is some I don't know what it is. But the commonality between the stories, they tip me toward, you know what? It's probably some common thing that happens within humans. It's a bad dream that we all feel is real. It's kind of like we all have that dream of flying or falling. And, maybe some people just have this sort of dream or experience. With all that being said, there's a lot of really good documentaries and cases where people have implants, they've got metal, they've got microchips, they have whatever. And the answer that I come down on that is it's definitely not what they think it is. It's definitely not, it's a space, little green man from a tin can walking in a room. But I wouldn't wholeheartedly discount the fact that some kind of bizarre phenomenon is happening. I don't even know if it necessarily has to be paranormal. It could just be something that happens to, 1 in 10 billion, or 1 in 10 million people or something.
Yeah, right now half your face is cut off, so maybe,
Oh, there you go.
There it is. There it is. Maybe the alien. I'm not saying the aliens have had your camera, but
they had that.
What's your thoughts, Dan?
I think if I think if there are aliens advanced enough to be here right now, and there certainly are, there have to be. Just statistically speaking, we think the part of what we call the known universe is about 13.8 billion years old, which means it's 13.8 billion light years from us from any point to the outer rim, whatever you want to call it. We also now think, because of the way we see the grid, if you want to call it that, of space-time as flat, that means it's kind of like standing on Earth, right? And that it's round, but it looks flat because it's so large under you. We think the universe is way larger than we ever believed it to be. Which means we're not looking at a 2, just for habitable planets, it's a 2 with 16 zeros behind it. Mm-hmm. But we're probably talking about, and for all intents and purposes, it's an infinite amount. So with an infinite amount of time, yeah, anything can happen, right? Once infinity's on the table, then you can't really do math like that anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same reason.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just ask Thanos.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So then that'll lead me to this, John. Sim world. Is that a possibility? That we're all living in a simulated world?
You know, I have really good friends who absolutely believe this. You know, and if you read about the singularity, you know, if you're Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near.
I had a guy in Ross Patterson Revolution who wrote the book, The Simulation Hypothesis. His name is Rizwan Virk. He's a doctor at MIT. And look, he said 80% that it's a sim world after all of his studies.
Yeah, here's where I could just tell you I come down on this is, does it ultimately matter? This is one of those questions of, does it matter? Because, and this is why. In the theory of the sim world, they're saying, oh, it's all a simulation, and what you think is real is not real. It's just a simulation. But if it is just a simulation and I think it's real and I can't prove that it's not real, then it's real. So it's like very, you know, to me, it's like very, you know, hippie. It's kind of like a hippie dude, you know, we're on the fingertip of a giant in the universe.
Right.
You can't, like the problem that I have with these kind of theories is that if you're going to put forward a theory that you're saying we're in a simulation, then I'm going to put forward the theory we're actually all underwater and it's all, everything that you see is a reflection of the stuff that's up above us that you'll never be able to see. And
yeah, that's Bertrand Russell's flying tea kettle argument.
Yes.
Basically, he said, like, people were like, you can't prove there's no God. He goes, well, you can't prove there's not a tea kettle orbiting the moon right now. That doesn't make it true necessarily.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the whole idea of it's a simulation. I mean, it's not like we're going to cut down a tree one day and, you know, a bunch of matrixy numbers are going to fly out of it.
Right.
Where you're like, oh, wow, it is a simulation.
The only
like,
reason it would matter is if we could escape the simulation, is what you're saying.
The only reason it would matter is if we could get out of it.
Right.
If you can't get out of it, then it doesn't matter. And we can, to me, this is one of those arguments of, I mean, we could frame this question a million different ways and never get anywhere. And it's not that it is an example. I can't say, no, it's not a simulation because I don't even know what they're talking about in terms of what it means to be a simulation. Right. So
yeah,
I feel like it's silly.
And the doctor who was on my show said the same thing of like, look, you can't do anything about it anyways. Therefore, you might as well just enjoy life and go through whatever it is.
That's not entirely true, though. Like, if you know you're inside of what's effectively a computer program, we understand how computer programs work. Mm-hmm. So we should be able to figure out more about the structure of life, and not just the structure, but how to influence it, right? If we knew that it was that's my brain. If you knew, think about Tron, right?
Yeah.
Or think about The Matrix. I know these are fucking movies. I got it. But
they're in his both are in his book, by the way.
Yeah, but think about The Matrix. One of the first things that Morpheus says to Neo is, "You think that's air you're breathing?" He goes, "Do you think your ability to run, jump, whatever, has anything to do with your muscles in this place?" No, it doesn't. So you should, like, if this is truly a simulation, someone would have figured out how to break the rules of it at some point. You would think, right? Because that happens in the most sophisticated computers on Earth. Something goes wrong frequently.
Yeah,
and you have to deal with that.
Speaking of Morpheus, I'm going to throw out a theory that I don't know if you guys have gone down this rabbit hole, but this is a rabbit hole that I will go down and say, I'm not saying this is the way that things do work, but I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if it is. And that is the theory of morphic resonance. And it's been popularized by a guy named Rupert Sheldrake. And it states that each species, that in the DNA from each species is its own receiver. The DNA itself is a receiver, and the species can communicate intangibly because thoughts exist outside of the physical form. And the proof for all of this in the experiments are for example, ants. And let's use this example of bees,
yeah,
right?
Either way, yeah.
You take an anthill, and if you had two anthills, and you took the ants from the north side of one anthill and swapped them with the ants on the south side of one anthill, you can swap them, and they will completely reverse direction and build the right way.
Yep.
And the question is how? They're clearly communicating through something. And if you take something like the 4-minute mile, something that was, previously thought of to be impossible to do, Sir Roger Bannister broke it in 1954. Yep. Then 46 days later, it was broken again. Then It was broken 300 times in 10 years. That's once every 12 days. When something becomes in the collective conscience, it's outside of you. And then that kind of taps into the whole, when we have a thought or a breakthrough happens, there's just something that we all get on the same page about or understand this. And this pandemic is a good example. Like, the world is scared. Yeah. There's something about it where maybe when we talk about where do songs come from, where do thoughts come from, just like in Rupert's example that he used, or Dr. Sheldrake's, what he does is he says a television, if you're watching a television and you see an image, where does that image come from? Inside the television or outside the television? And he said, so when you have a thought, is it actually coming from inside your head, or is it outside your head and you're receiving it? It's a really interesting thought exercise to say, maybe that's how we're all so connected, and how you have all these weird coincidences, and you think of a friend and then they call you, or this global consciousness. It might be morphic resonance. I think it's an interesting theory.
I do too. I think it's also heavily tied in with quantum entanglement. I mean, this is just basic science, but for example, there's no atom in your body right now that was there 5 years ago. You understand that? Mm-hmm. Like, your teeth, your brain, your eyes, everything is different now. Like, there's 0% of you now that was you 5 years ago, structurally speaking.
Structurally, yes. Yeah.
And what we know about quantum entanglement, it's a principle. Essentially, when two atoms touch, they can then communicate instantaneously across any amount of distance. So information is energy, and it takes the same time to travel as light. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Speed of light. But you can move.
Also, remember, though, two atoms can't touch.
Well, but come into contact is the phrase they use, but that's not really accurate either. You found that out with the baseball bat hitting a baseball, right? That's a very good episode of ESPN Sports Science, by the way.
The only two atoms that I've seen touch are in West Hollywood. It was a Friday afternoon, and look, day drinking happens, and I saw two atoms touch.
They were docking. Anyways, the point of that is just based on those two very simple scientific principles. Anybody you've ever come into contact with, and you think about it like a virus, like the thing that scares people about COVID is that the flu is a 1-to-1. Like, the ratio typically is, if you get the flu, you're probably going to pass it on to one other person. Mm-hmm. With COVID, you're probably going to pass it on to 3 additional people, right? Well, think about it that way as a viral spread. Like, for thousands of years, we've all been coming into contact with one another, sharing atoms, as weird as that sounds. If any amount of those end up in our brains, then there's no reason we wouldn't be able to communicate that way, right? Like, to me, that makes sense. And I think people call the morphic resonance.
Morphic resonance.
They call that, like, paranormal. I don't think it's paranormal.
No.
Like, it's just science. Like, that should be possible. We should be able to communicate without talking, because we see other creatures doing it all the time. More we see what I call genetic memory. Like, the reason human babies are fucking worthless because our skulls are too large to get out of our mother's vaginas. Right. So we have to come out half retarded.
Yeah, it's first. Like a cone. Yeah.
And we spend, like, that time we should be spending in the womb, basically. Like, the first year of your life. You should still be in there. At any rate, a cat or a dog comes out ready to fuck shit up. Especially a cat. Like, a cat knows how to hunt already, knows how to fight. So where did it learn that? Where did a wolf learn that it's a wolf?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And to go back to your Roger Bannister points, or Bannister, with the 4-minute mile, with that, I remember reading the book. There was a movie that just came out about it that I saw. It was more or less fear, because out in the world, it was just a human cannot run an under a 4-minute mile, or your heart would explode. That was the kind of thought process back then going on at the time. once it was accomplished, don't you think that it just entered everybody else's mind that, hey, man, all right, you're not going to die if you try to attempt to do this. You're going to be fine, and it is possible. And then, therefore, that's why it was able to be broken, because people lost their fear and decided to go for it anyways. I just saw this happen with the marathon. Remember that guy who just ran under the, 2 hours?
Yeah.
In the shoes, and your heart was supposed to explode or whatever. I think you're going to start to see that more and more, because it's a mental thing. And once people see someone else doing it, then they think that they can do it.
Yeah, it totally. I mean, I think like the idea, I think that idea, but leaning into that is there's a I think it's very clear that there's a collective conscience of some kind, right? Like we as a species are all on the same page about things all the time. And when bad stuff happens, like, like this pandemic or 9/11 or something, you just feel different. And that's not just an individual emotion. It just seems like it's sort of like the collective experience of some kind. And when, look, I am definitely a religious person. I was born and raised Catholic, married in the Vatican, totally get it. But there is no one correct religion. And there are so many examples of collective thought somehow manifesting something to happen. And whatever we want to call that, whether it's a miracle or, somehow manifesting something, it's almost like when you're at a sporting event and you could feel momentum. Momentum in sports there is no real law on momentum. But when you look at something like, Jeremy Lin scoring 20 points in 8 straight games and people going crazy, like there's this energy that happens that allows things to occur. Whether or not we call it prayer or collective conscience, I do think that there is something to it.
Linsanity.
Do you think that guys who are better at capturing those moments maybe have some like deeper causal connection to whatever we're referring to here? Like we in Jordan, we called it will. Like he had the will to win.
Yeah.
No one we've ever seen. We've never seen anybody, in my opinion, like Pete Rose or Michael Jordan. Like they wanted to win. They didn't give a fuck if they had to murder somebody to get it done. They're gonna win. And
isn't it? Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that what's interesting is, often in the that's too good to be true. It often is, right? Like if we do a study, we did a study, for example, on who's the most clutch shooter of all time, and
right.
You go down all the greats, and like people are like, oh, well, Jordan has to be the most.
It wasn't
shooter.
Jordan.
And it's not Jordan. Do you want to know who? When we did the study, it was Paul Pierce.
Oh, I was gonna say Steve Kerr, maybe, but
Steve Kerr. It was Paul Pierce, followed by Big Shot Bob.
Oh yeah, Robert Horry.
Dude,
well, he's got 7 rings for a reason, brother.
Yeah,
exactly.
I still remember that 3 from the corner, from the baseline.
Absolutely.
I rember the 3 from the top of the key in the Lakers.
Yeah, that one too.
Lakers,
yeah.
that guy, was insane. It's true. You're right.
There's something to it being too good to be true, where you're like, oh my God, that right thing happened at the right time, at the right moment, in the right place. But that is what's so amazing about sport is, you have this group of people who are all rooting for something to happen, and then it does happen. And, the skeptic will say, it's a coincidence. Just because people wanted it to happen doesn't mean that it helped it to happen. But then somebody like myself will say, there's something to energy that we just see in every field over and over and over, that positive energy begets positive energy. Well, negative energy begets negative energy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still don't know what it is, but if you look throughout history, like we have this, there's this trope in fucking Hollywood that the good guy always wins, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, at least at the national level, the global level, the good guys won way more often than not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we've been able to curtail people like Kim Jong-il and now Kim Il-sung and et cetera. And that'll continue, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Russia lost.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe that's a Western point of view because Russia is like, I'm not in Russia, I'm in the U.S. and we won. Right. But I don't think so. I think Russia was genuinely evil back then.
Yep.
Yeah, to me, I get disappointed when I feel like there is energy or momentum happening for one thing, and at the very end, it just gets ripped away, and you don't complete.
Well, it shows you how fragile
what that energy is. Yeah, I mean, for example, like just because you're a big sports guy and so were we. I remember when Butler played Duke in the national championship, and that kid still had a shot, and he shot that 3-ball that went off the glass, and like it could have banked in, and it could have been the greatest story of all time. And holy shit, man, I was disappointed when it didn't drop at the end, and I was like, why? I want the answer to why that didn't happen. Like Tiger Woods and the Masters. We all wanted Tiger to come back and win 2 years ago, and he did. But he shouldn't have. And things like that where you're like, oh, man, God damn it, that are always unexplainable. And I think that's why sports is the never-ending thing that connects us all, where it's like, man, there is some times where the energy and the momentum is there and it'll happen, and there's other times where it just won't. You're going to be angry for the rest of your life.
It's so funny when you look at streaks, and we did the science of the rally and the science of the slump. And when you look statistically, people will say, look, on any given outcome, usually it's binary, it's either good or bad, it's a coin toss, and theoretically it's a 50-50 chance on something. So how do you get 27 wins in a row? How do you get 10 base hits in a row, or whatever you're saying?
56.
Yeah.
50. Right,
yeah, 56 DiMaggio, yeah.
Exactly. How does something like that happen? I say, dude, like this whole idea about being in the zone, seeing things clearer, positive energy begetting positive energy. We all have experienced where things are easier. Like it's just if you're playing if anybody's ever played baseball, and when you're in a groove, you just can't miss. Like the ball looks like a beach ball.
Yeah.
And why is that? To me, it's we've disconnected ourselves from thought and allowed ourselves to be in the moment.
Yeah, it's a shower principle, essentially.
Yeah.
It's exactly. Yeah. It's 100%. And when
so
you do that,
what we could do,
it happens.
We could all learn from Rube from Major League 2. We should be reading Victoria's Secret's catalogs and be dumb as fuck all the time, because that's how he cleared his mind.
Yeah, I don't believe in Major League 2. I don't believe that happened. That's one of my biggest conspiracies. Anyone who brings that movie up needs to die. There should have only been just the one. No need for part 2.
Well, there shouldn't be 3. That's for sure.
No.
Everybody. That was Scott Bakula.
Charlie Sheen's trying to make a new one, by the way. He's been shopping that script forever. Let's move on to something completely ridiculous.
Yes.
Because I got to know your thoughts on this one. If you believe in this one, I don't know what to do with myself, and I might just walk out of the room. Bigfoot. Okay. Is Bigfoot on your list that you believe in?
Here's all I have to say.
That was a big sigh. That was a big sigh you took.
let's just use a tiny bit of logic, just a tiny bit. How could Bigfoot possibly exist? Like, how in the world? And when you say, because do you know how many TV shows and documentaries and books? I'm like, wait, hold on a second. You're talking about the big business of Bigfoot? What? You mean someone's making money off of it, therefore it's got to be real? Like, are you kidding me? Like, the idea that there's Bigfoot roaming around and, oh my God, like, look, the Patterson footage, which is the famous footage of Bigfoot.
My grandfather.
Do you want to know? Yeah. Do you want to know what he actually said right before he shot that footage? He said, I'm going to go out and shoot footage of Bigfoot. That is true. And oh my God, he actually got it.
Yeah.
Like, what are the odds? It's incredible. So you're like, when I say use your brain, you're like, look, when people are like, oh no, there's a Yeti and there's a Bigfoot and there's a blah blah blah. What about guys, there's a big business.
Yeah.
It's a big business and it's all a farce. And all that it would take is one Bigfoot to get hit by a truck in Montana.
Yep.
And we'd be like, whoa, there it is. But it's just the idea that somehow there's this giant species and they're way smarter than we are and they're avoiding us. There's no chance.
Yeah, well, in Montana, it's a Pacific Northwest animal, so you definitely wouldn't be in Montana. But
no, he's probably retired down to Boca by now. You would think, right?
Dude,
one would have to think.
Is he Jewish?
It's not just Pacific Northwest. There's like in every state. When we did Fact or Fake, there's in every state they have their monster.
Yeah,
they've got their Bigfoot. They call it something different. Because why? It's tourism.
Yeah, exactly.
It's tourism and it's money. God.
Exactly. I wonder if Bigfoot's in a cave now because of COVID-19.
I wonder if he's actually Chewbacca.
Could be.
Like that actor just got lost in costume and he's been out there all these years and people are like, oh, who is this asshole?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And with that Patterson footage, by the way, my grandfather shot that. He was definitely some form of man in a suit, and it was a shitty
100%.
suit nonetheless. Like, none of that looked remotely real to me, where I was like, come on, man. I won't get behind that, and then I'll follow this up with the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, couldn't be true even if we wanted it to be, even if we really wanted it to
Right?
be.
Yeah.
Couldn't possibly be true.
No.
Like, it's so far away from it, and that's where people fall into these, oh my God, there are all of these mystical creatures all over the planet. Like, no, there aren't.
Yeah.
Like, there's a big business about them, but they don't exist.
The
fact.
creatures that exist are fucked up enough. We don't have to go make new ones. Although I will say,
Yeah.
what's more likely? Like, if you didn't know anything about any of this, what would you more likely expect? Like something that looked like a deer but had a 30-foot fucking neck. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Or a horse with a horn.
Look, both are plausible to me, where it was born with some form of defect. But if we're going to, like, let's say the Loch Ness Monster, okay? I don't something like this where occasionally
there's a brachiosaurus living in a fucking body of water.
Right.
Yeah.
But occasionally there is, water life that is dug up where it's some unexplained fish or, a whale that nobody's ever seen before, something like that. Like, that would be fine, but a full-on dinosaur living underneath a lake that pops its head up in Scotland is that's too much for me, and I can't get behind that.
Dinosaurs definitely still exist.
Yeah, with like alligators and things like that.
Alligators and crocodiles.
I mean,
Crocodiles,
every
yeah.
fucking bird that you've ever seen is an avian fucking dinosaur.
Correct. I just don't think a Loch Ness would be able to survive today's world.
No, I mean, look,
that type of dinosaur.
Like, I don't know how they're making money to pay for rent and their cell phone and all this bullshit and how
stimulus $1,200. Loch Ness.
Yeah, but I don't know what they're doing in the UK though.
Who knows? Who knows? We'll get to the last sponsor here, and then we'll get to some ones that were probably true. Last sponsor is boxofawesome.com. Look, you go to this. You go to the sites. You pop in a 4-5 little questions. They tell you what kind of man you are in this life, or whoa, man. They just added it for girls too, and then they send you some cool shit in the mail. It's just a box of magic every single month. It's kind of like Christmas. I've gotten a hatchet. I've gotten a dop kit. The whiskey. You've gotten a whiskey decanter. Mm-hmm. I got a travel bag. All this shit's like $200, and it's $40.
You know what?
Promo code Drinkin Bros. You get 20% off at boxofawesome.com. If your wife is getting Birchbox bullshit sent to her, you can certainly get this.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite day of the month when this comes.
Yeah.
This is my new Girls Gone Wild for me.
Yeah, it's
I used to get the VCR tapes of Girls Gone Wild.
I feel
monthly.
like they should be putting
monthly.
together end of the world kits to send out to people.
They're in there.
Dude,
That would be
There's
super
survival
funny.
kits in there.
there's Killcliff has its own. We've got Recover, Endure, Ignite,
Yep.
and CBD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else do you need?
That's all you need in this life.
Guns and ammo and shit. But
Yeah, but what's first?
Yeah.
What's first?
Exactly.
You know, CBD
Exactly.
products and
I think it would be fun to
And a
have
hatchet.
like a quiz, and it determines what your fucking survival gear is.
oh, I like that.
You know what I mean?
I like that a lot.
Because look, there's certain people like I'm not going to give you a bunch of stuff to hunt and kill animals because you've never done that before.
Right.
I would you would be a gatherer, you wouldn't be a hunter.
I'd kill deer. I've killed deer.
Yeah, but like that's
I
not.
blasted some ducks out.
But
of
you
the
don't know
sky.
how to like skin one and prepare it for food and all that shit, right?
No, I'm able to take out all the insides and all that other shit, right? But you're right. As far as like the meat processing,
Butchering it,
yeah.
Yeah, so I would. You're a gatherer,
Yeah.
right? Gather berries and wood to burn.
Well, I mean, I kill the animals too. So
No.
you know what I'm saying, Dan?
If you can't prepare the animal, then you're not allowed to kill
Here's
it.
the thing, John doesn't know me in real life. I'm both. I'm every man you probably want to be at home that you're thinking about right now. So
I know that.
I'm both. I'm both a hunter and a gatherer. I hunt it and then I gather it up and give it. I'm a provider and I give it out to the rest of the world.
Your survival kit would include like a reusable diaper, probably.
Nope. Toothpick is all I need to kill a man or a wolf, and I'll have you know that now.
Well, I don't know why you would need to kill wolves necessarily.
Just in case I get hungry. The pandemic is coming to your door real fast if you watch the news. Be afraid. You're going to have to kill wolves on your own, and wolves
That's
are
right.
the only animals that can survive the virus.
I'm thinking like a reusable diaper and some kind of talcum powder of some sort. That would be your survival kit.
I need to powder up my own nuts, though. That has nothing to do with them. Want to put that clear. Big fan of Gold Bond. They're not a sponsor, and they should be. And I go
Yeah.
the green bottle, not the yellow one. Go to boxofawesome.com. Promo code Drinkin Bros, 20% off. Let's get to some ones that might be true here. Bush Hinckley, this connection.
Man, I'll tell you what. First of all, I honestly do think that Bush Sr. was a really smart president. I think that his courage to not go into Iraq was unbelievable. That everybody was like, you're on the doorstep. You got to go in. And the fact that he's like, we don't know how to fight that kind of war, took a lot of courage. I think he's amazing. With all that being said, man, is it odd that you have the brother of you have Hinckley's brother having dinner with Bush's brother the night before Reagan gets shot by John Hinckley. That's just the kind of coincidence that you're like, man, is that weird? And those are the sort of things you say, what are the odds? And I'm not saying by any means, I'm not saying that the Bushes had something to do with it, that it's something to do with the Reagan assassination or attempted assassination. I'm saying, man, you got some splaining to do if that happens.
Yeah, what was the answer? What was the answer for that specifically, that dinner?
When you like look it up, when you read it, it's gone from, in all the sort of threads, it's gone from, oh, they were friendly for years and it wasn't uncommon and it just was a thing that happened, to, oh, it never happened. Like, oh, it's a myth that it didn't happen. And then you look in between, and where you can get a lot of really good information when you have like books. There are these things called books that had like pages, words.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys know what they are.
No. I'm a New York Times bestselling author.
It sounds
whatever,
like a bunch of liberal bullshit
to
me.
It sounds like you ain't gonna learn nothing from that books. But when you like look back and you see sort of like the records of things that have occurred, doesn't mean that they're true. It means, man, that is a really strange coincidence. And if it did happen, it certainly is a piece to put in place to say, gosh, could that possibly just be a coincidence? Maybe. But it certainly does seem weird.
Do you think it happened?
I'm going to err on the side. This is what I'm going to err on the side of. No.
Really?
I'm going to say it didn't happen.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm going to say it didn't happen is because if it did happen, I think people would be jumping up and down a lot louder, and would have been during the presidential election. When you have people pulling out everything they possibly can from DUIs to, drug abuse to whatever. Yeah. You would think that people would be jumping up and down about it. So I think it probably did not happen.
Okay.
If it did, there's something super strange.
Well, let me see if I can change your mind.
Yeah.
Go on.
Dan and Evan, you guys have you're
not
big
me.
into Bush Senior. You're big into Bush Senior.
It's Evan. So Evan is convinced that George H.W. Bush, Herbert Walker, was a non-official cover, case officer for the agency. Because it's so weird that a guy who had not worked in government intelligence in any way would just end up the CIA director, the deputy director, then the director, then the vice president, then the president. That's a weird track for somebody, right?
Right.
So after the Bay of Pigs, it's well known that the CIA was very unhappy with John F. Kennedy. And not only that, but they were unhappy that he was kind of kowtowing to the communists for a while and all this other bullshit. And then Kennedy gets killed, right? We know that there's all these CIA connections to everybody, even peripherally, that was involved in the JFK assassination. Everybody involved in that had some kind of connection to the CIA some way or another. Mm-hmm. And then we find out that H.W. Bush was in Dallas that morning. But he, when asked about it, said, I don't remember where I was when it happened.
Right. He's the only American.
Yeah, he's the only American that doesn't.
Yeah, wait. When what happened? That doesn't ring a bell.
That is a lie. To me, it would. I would easily accept the idea that George H.W. Bush had something. Because look, Oswald was a mentally disturbed person that somebody used to take a shot at the president. That is, to me, there's no question about that. Mm-hmm. That guy was crazy as fuck, and somebody used his crazy to try to assassinate the president. How is this different?
Well,
if Bush is involved in the first one,
right,
then how could he not be involved in the second one? You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
like if you show up to bust a bunch of people and
Yep.
only one of them's got a record, you're like, you're coming with me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and so to me, because I'm gonna lean with Dan on this one, and here's
Go
why.
on. And I'm going to prove you otherwise.
I get you, but
Go on.
if you're just looking at it from just a quick surface check of it, Reagan was an actor, kind of like a Trump, one would say right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It happened in '81, right into the first year of his first term or whatever. If you were going to take him out because you were worried about the country and all that other shit, would they have missed Reagan that much versus someone else in there? To me, yeah. Look, Bush was the vice president at that time. He would have become president had Reagan been assassinated.
Yeah, but would Reagan have become the president he was had Hinckley not taken a shot at him? That's the question for me. Like,
yes, but
what
clearly,
what would the Cold War would have looked like? Would rollback have worked the way it was supposed to? Would the economy have worked with the Iran-Contra shit, which, that was a scandal, but it did what we were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of good stuff happened under Reagan, except for the 6 years where he raised taxes, by the way.
right?
To all you conservative fucking fanboys out there. But anyways, would Reagan have been the same president? Would all those things have gotten done if he had not been emboldened and empowered by? Because he had just come. Remember, Jimmy Carter had just left office.
Right.
And I could have beat him. You could have beat him. He was one of the worst presidents in modern and American history. And I wouldn't say that even Reagan came in with a huge mandate to do anything. But once he fucking survived getting shot on live television, and then the next State of the Union, a balloon pops, and he goes, "Missed me," and just keeps on with his State of the Union.
Right.
Like, he was lionized as a figure after that. That was it. Like, he would call fucking Tip O'Neill and be like, "Hey, we're getting," and Tip O'Neill's a Democratic senator. He'd be like, "We're getting this done." The end. And it would get done. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I wouldn't say that it would be.
I agree
Bush.
with everything you're saying.
I don't
But he
think-
missed, and instead of actually going through with
that's
killing
what I'm
him.
saying.
So
I think George H.W. Bush, if he was trying to make this happen, he would say, like, don't kill him, just shoot him. Because George H.W. Bush could not have become president right then.
I would have said. So here's where I'm going to render a verdict on this.
Okay.
On my side, I'm not saying you guys are wrong, but I'm saying here's where I would differ. The first of all, the Bush family and the history of the Bush family, man, we could spend hours, right? When you go back to Prescott Bush, and you're like, his signature is on the alien document, blah blah blah, which I don't think you like go back to all that kind of stuff. You're like, oh my God, there's and Bush never being elected to anything until he became president, really, right, was bizarre, right? It's kind of strange that the way that it sort of goes on. But here's what I would say. The reason why I don't think the dinner took place is because, like, you have two scenarios. One, hey, let's shoot him dead and make sure he's dead. And if that were the case, that was the worst plan ever. And what an idiot to have dinner with the brother of the guy. Like, you didn't cover your tracks very well. So I can't imagine that the Bushes are that stupid to try to kill somebody and to be having dinner. So that doesn't make any sense. And then if you say hey, shoot him, but don't kill him. I mean, how do you guarantee somebody's not going to die, especially an old dude?
Yes.
Yeah. He'd hemorrhage out. So to me, it defies logic that they would have anything to do with it. And that's why I think the dinner didn't happen. That's my ultimate conclusion.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. And then we'll close this out here with Dan's favorite subject, quantum physics. This is Dan. You spend a lot. If you listen to the show on a regular basis, I'm trying to figure out how to word this correctly. Dan will get high and spend hours and hours and hours of his day researching quantum physics just because you enjoy it.
Right.
Therefore, I wanted to save this for last for you. What is your conspiracy theory?
I don't have one. This is his, so I want to hear what he has to say.
So this came from him.
Yes.
Okay, great. What is your conspiracy theory on quantum physics then?
So I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. It's a conundrum. We're stuck between Newtonian physics and quantum physics with no bridge. So we have two different laws. One that applies to obviously objects that we can see and touch and measure, and one that applies to things that we can't measure. And it seems very, very, very strange that both sets of laws seem to work in their respective environments, but there's nothing bridging the gap between them. And so the question then becomes, which one is more true, or is there no such thing as one universal law and there are a bunch of laws? Which then, if that's true, that there's not, like, laws are dependent upon environments and they change and they're different, that Newtonian physics is different than quantum physics and there is no unifying theory of it, then I would contest that, look, all of the invisible stuff, the stuff we don't see, the stuff we don't know, the idea about the projection of thought or where thought originates falls more into, there's this quantum level. There's probably this other dimension and infinitely more dimensions where the laws are all wacky and they don't apply to either one of those, and it's beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So I think maybe this is we're down a fucking rabbit hole now, but
who cares?
I think thought might be a projection of the fourth spatial dimension. That seems likely to me. So we see 3 spatial dimensions, right? We see back, front, up, down, left, right. We see all those.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fourth. According to M theory or string theory, there are 10 total spatial dimensions, and then there's space-time, which would be the 11th. Right now we call it the 4th dimension, but let's say the 4th spatial dimension, it'll be something that we can't conceive of, right? Okay, imagine being a dot on a piece of paper that's flat, and you only know that, right? So let's say you have eyes, you can turn around, you can see the whiteness all around you,
mm-hmm.
but you can't see up or down. You can only see left, right, back, and front. That's it. So there's some version of up for us that would be a fourth spatial dimension that we can't conceive of right now. And technically speaking, like if you think about this, like if this...
And you think that's thought?
Maybe, yeah, I think so. But if you think about this, like each one of these coasters is flat. If I were to pick one up and then put it back down, or if I were to pick up the dot that was on there and put it back down, that dot would have no way to explain to any of the other creatures on the surface of this paper what up was, right? Even if we experienced it, we still wouldn't be able to say what the fuck it was. There is that for us, and we don't know what it is. And then there's 6 more of those, right? So do the laws of physics hold up at each one of those levels? Are the laws of physics different for a 2-dimensional object than a 3-dimensional? We don't know any of this.
Yeah. The only law that I'm concerned with is Megan's law, and that is obviously going door to door, letting people know that you're a registered sex offender, and that's it.
That's right.
That's the only one I care about as far as Dan goes. But the rest of the laws, I'm open to interpretation.
You're open to it.
Yeah.
I love the idea in quantum physics of the observer influences the outcome, right?
Oh, yeah.
Particle versus wave. That idea plays into the idea about momentum or slumps or whatever, right? Like the observer is affecting the outcome. And if we think about that, so let's take this whole COVID thing. Mm-hmm. What are we observing and how are we going to affect the outcome? Because is this thing a pandemic? Is it just another virus? Mm-hmm. Is it an overreach of government? Is it, us being safe? Like, it seems like eventually we're all going to get our heads around what is happening, and that collective conscience, I hope, guides us in the right direction, because it does seem like the observer does affect the outcome.
The most obvious example of that is Schrodinger's cat, right? So he theorized that
Schrodinger's,
if you put like a fucking cat in a box with a cesium atom, which is poison, you would die from it, and then close the box. You don't know if the cat's alive or not until you open the box, thus exposing it, right? So it's in a superposition of both dead and alive. I know that doesn't make any sense to the common layperson, but it's science, right? So you can't. It's demonstrated. What he's saying is not like hokey. That's basic science.
No, I understand it. I just think that there is a lot of things in the world that we cannot explain. Hence, a show like this is super fascinating to talk about, and we could for hours and hours and hours, endlessly throughout history. And John, I'd love to have you back for even more of these.
Absolutely,
if you're open to it. Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me, follow me on Twitter at JohnBrenkus _ JohnBrenkus _ Also check out killcliff.com and all the Killcliff accounts.
Great.
That's where you can find me.
And are you out of Atlanta? Where are you based out of? People were asking after the last show.
I'm actually going to be moving to Atlanta. So that's the plan as of right now.
Oh, gotcha.
I'll be moving to Atlanta. I'm in Virginia right now. We're living in Park City, and so, but I think I'm going down to Atlanta. So, but you know what? I say that's assuming the country opens back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So stay tuned.
If you need some tricks of the trade from Atlanta, let me know. I lived there. I grew up there my entire life.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I left when I was 18 years old. I was a young man, and I left to go to college. Yeah, I love Atlanta. Yeah. Big fan. John, thanks for being on the show. D'Anthony Hollaway. This was a blast. Mm-hmm. This was a great show, man.
Anytime I get to talk about quantum theory, then I'm happy.
Yeah. Anything else in this world? He's definitely not happy. Subscribe to Drinkin Bros podcast on YouTube, and then go to iTunes and rate us. Just give us a 5-star and a quick one-liner. Our advertising agency loves it. That's about it. We don't really care, but they do, and it means a lot to them.
The reviews, you mean?
Yeah.
I like look. Here's the deal. If you write a review that you think is good enough, screenshot it and send it to me. And if it's good enough, then you'll get something for it. I promise you that.
Yeah, just DM him. Go. Are you at Dan Holloway on Instagram?
Yeah, Dan Holloway. I give people free shit on the interwebs all the time.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to break me. It's hard to make me, like, I'm one of those, like, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
If you make me laugh out loud to myself, then you will get a prize. I promise you that.
And that's true. He'll send out weird shit to you.
Yep.
For John, D'Anthony, I'm Ross. This is the Drinkin Bros. Good night, everyone.